Hello, Scorpio. Welcome to the Plaid Oracle. As I was laying out your cards, Aquarius kept sort of popping into my head. And I think that the readings are related. The Aquarius reading was about a time of high weirdness. And yours kind of is too, except that it's not so much about a time of high weirdness as about your weirdness. And what you have in common, of course, is Pluto. So he's moving through Aquarius, and he is squaring Scorpio. And he is one of your guides, along with Mars. But Pluto is certainly the possibility, right, of transforming how you see or how you understand things. I think that to some extent Aquarius is a sign of understanding. You know, Gemini gathers information and sees and sifts and sorts, thinks about. But Aquarius he's the fixed earth. He's about the grounding of the idea. Right? His guides are Saturn and Uranus. The idea, the inspiration, and then the grounding of that. So the first card we have out here is this Helmet card. This is from this deck. I bought it in Paris. It doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it's always just right. Now the scene underlying, and it's not so much about underlying as it is kind of just about the message. So this is, you know, a helmet from the ancient world. You know, that a Greek warrior or a Roman warrior might have worn. And then we have this modern day kind of soldier in his helmet. And then right below him is this statue. And actually, I'm just seeing now, there's the doorway beyond that. So there is something from the past that is now coming to the fore. And I think that this is talking about past lives. I think that if you have come to this reading, you have a past life that involves some sort of occult practice or profession. You were an oracle, a seer, a diviner, a high priestess or priest. You know, you might even be something like an herbalist or a healer, a shaman. You know, you were in charge of a temple somewhere. And that knowledge, that experience, that point of view is now coming back. I don't think that it's about specific knowledge, as in, you know, you're going to remember, you know, what happened during some specific mystical rite in ancient Greece. Right? Like during the mysteries of Eleusis. And we don't really know what happened at that time. It's, you know, these things were not recorded because they were secret. But I don't think that's the point. I think that, you know, rituals and rites and this kind of thing work better when they are time and culturally specific. And we don't, while humans are pretty similar to who we were a couple of thousand years ago, how society works has changed, right? The details of it, I should say. We have different correspondences in our mind. We have different views of the archetypes. I mean, you can even see it in astrology. If you go back and you do reading about Hellenistic astrology and how they viewed things, and astrology was really about finding out what was going to happen. And now it's become kind of a tool of self-discovery and psychology and these things. So there's a shift in these ways. Right, in China, the color white is the color of mourning. You wouldn't wear it at your wedding. So there's these kinds of things that are important. So it's not about that. It's about the perspective, the understanding of the nature of reality, what's actually out there. And then the unseen underlying is the ship. And it feels a lot like the Six of Swords, particularly the Six of Swords, the Six of Air, and the Good Tarot, which is shown as a ship flying through the clouds. Like traveling to a different place mentally. And this may be facilitated now. Uranus is about to move into Gemini. He's going to trine Pluto, air to air, with Neptune, right? The planet of imagination and expansion and fantasy, even things that seem perhaps like fantasy at the moment. And then with Saturn there's also a grounding of all of these things into the body. So we have the advocate of knockers. He sits and listens. He knows that the knockers, the Sasquatch, are real. He's waiting to encounter them. He has faith. And right below him too is this jackalope. And he sits in the Hierophant position in this deck. So, right, a new belief system is really going to be grounded in you in a way that it hasn't been before. And actually right below that I'm seeing now is the Ghost Stalker, who is the Fool in this deck. And right, the Remote Viewer, he's the Magician. Now the underlying thing here is the Eight of Saucers. And I think it's the Eight of Pentacles, and I think it's about accepting the unexpected, about being able to live in that. To really, to bring those things into daily life rather than having them separate. As this is my spiritual belief system over here. And then this is my, real life where I do all the practical things. And I think it's really easy to fall into that. I certainly do. Like the spiritual life is, a story, or, right? Because we're used to that. We watch movies and things on TV, and we read books, which, can take us to these fantasy worlds. But, we were taught when we were children that these things aren't real, and there's no fairies, and this is just a story. And then this is real life. And that kind of underlying belief system, even if you're, trying to undo it, can be, tenacious. But it feels like now the energies are really in favor of, this ancient other life really coming out, so that it becomes much more easily accessible. Because then we have the Ten of Saucers, which is the Ten of Pentacles, success, completion. In this card, this is a woman who's being returned. She was taken in the Seven of Saucers card. And now she's back. The Seven of Saucers, the Seven of Pentacles, that's the process that I think has been your life up until this point. You've been in this process, you've been learning about things, you learned about the world as humans, as your family, and then people around you wanted you to know it. And then you encountered this, spiritual sphere, and you started some unlearning and learning new things. And now it seems like you have reached a point where a lot of this is complete. And we get this Advocate of Ghosts card. And this ghost back here in the card has sent these moths in order to turn this guy's attention. Right? He's kind of in the wrong place if he's looking for the ghost. He needs to have his attention turned. And the Five of Saucers here is feeling like a clearing out. That, maybe it's about beliefs, maybe it's something else, maybe it's something in your physical world that has fallen away. Maybe it's something you've walked away from. Maybe it's, this could all still be happening. But there's a kind of clearing out so that you can see. And then we get Indrid Cold, who I had never heard of until I got this deck. I'm really loving this Tarot of the Unexplained. He's a character who appears in some stories. People apparently met him. He told them that his name was Indrid Cold, that he had, sort of telepathic powers and other things. But he also represents the Emperor. Taking back your own mind and your ability to think for yourself and to come to your own conclusions. And this may be a big part of this Pluto square for you, coming as it does from an air sign in Aquarius. And Aquarius, right, it has these two really kind of strong aspects. One, of really being able to have an innovative thought, see something that no one has seen before. A fantastic idea. But at the same time, it can also be really entrenched. Right, we see that in the scientific community. There's you know, somebody comes up with a new theory and there's a pylon of people saying, no, you're crazy, you're deluded, you're, you know, and it takes a long time, sometimes, for the new idea to be seen and appreciated. And these are these two, right, these two sides. There's also sometimes a tendency of, when you get a new thing, to forget everything that came before. And to just do the new thing. The new is best. Right? That's kind of the downside of that. And this is about really being able to think about it for yourself. To assess your experiences, you know, what you see and know to be true, what you receive from source, and to not fall into either of these camps of, you know, only the new is good or only what we have is right. Right? To be able to make your own choices and decisions. And then I think it's partly what this sanctuary is about. That you create this sanctuary in your own mind. Where you are clear and you know what is going on. Now with this soulmates card coming right underneath, and I actually didn't see it until this moment. It may be that someone is going to join you in this place. Could be somebody that you already know. I mean, it could be that you're you know, a really good friend, or your partner, your spouse is having a similar epiphany, and you know, you go into this sanctuary together. Or it could be that you meet somebody new who comes. Interestingly, the underside here is this hibiscus card, which talks about beauty. So I think that a good part of this ancient understanding, is about beauty. You know, maybe the idea of walking in beauty, of walking in harmony with the life force and with nature. You know, I think that it's perfectly possible to have cities and all of these, you know, and many of the, you know, amazing things we have, like hot showers, which are high on my list of modern conveniences. And to live that in, you know, without having to destroy and pollute the earth. I think that it's absolutely possible that we don't have to go back to, you know, living in huts. But that we have to change how we think about these things. And this, I think, is a moment. The Libra reading is out. I almost called it The Great Turning. But when I went to go look where I had heard that, it was, you know, sort of echoing in my mind. It's actually a book. And an essay also by Joanna Macy. I can't remember the name of the author of the book. But you can go find it on the Google. And it's an idea of humanity turning back, right? That this is the great turning. Back to living in harmony with the life force. Right? This lavender bliss. This, you know, warrior of creation rather than destruction. All right, this, you know, really recognizing ourselves as part of nature. You know, whether you think that, I mean, you probably don't, but whether you sometimes thought, or know people who think that humanity is above nature, that we're meant to control it, master it, or whether you think that humanity is a blight and a mistake. I think neither is true. That gives us way too many, I mean, both of those ideas give us way more power and significance in relationship to the earth and the cosmos. It's kind of arrogant, really, actually, in a way. I mean, if that helps you to release that thinking. Because we don't really know, right? That assumes that we know where things are going. You know, what Source's intentions are, what the Earth's intentions are. Now, this next row is interesting because the 3 cards that are out fell out together. And I barely shuffled at all, but I felt like I should stop. And I turned the deck over and there was the High Priestess. And then below her is the Lovers. And then I'm actually just seeing now below that is Judgment. And this Knight of Cups. Oh my goodness. And the Ace of Cups. So, right? It's like a whole... Right? The ancient self. Coming now into being. And, you know, really bringing this cup forward. For you. You know, and maybe, I mean, below that is this, which may be where you've been. Wandering around, searching for things. And then the other side is this King of Swords. The mastery and command of your mind. It's yours. The ability to know when you're really being influenced. I mean, I feel like that's part of, right, like this remote viewer, you know, feels also sort of telepathic to me. And we are receiving things from other people all the time. And the skill is actually to know, you know, what's yours and what is really coming from others. To be clear. He is also the card of Aquarius. 3 of Wands, looking forward, taking action in that direction. The Tower. But the Tower beautifully followed by Temperance. By coming into rest, into beauty. And what's really interesting is that I feel like the next row is, they're like clarifying cards. I don't think that's ever happened before. At least not in one of these readings that I've done. So, right, we have this High Priestess. And then we have this Tune Your Frequency. Right, it's almost like the High Priestess seen from the rear. It says boundaries, magnetism, energy clearing. Right? Being clear. And then on the underside, with this King of Swords, this clarity, this command, we have choose your own adventure. Lucid dreams, conscious discoveries, manifestation. with this Three of Wands, this, which is also, although there are no other people, this is a card of a beginning of collaboration. The Ace is the idea that comes. The Two of Wands is kind of making a decision about how to move forward. Then the Three is the moving forward and may involve others. And what we have here is you are a gift. Visionary, step into your light. So know your own value. You know, and this is really about inhabiting that. There's no, you know, often when people talk about, you know, saying your truth or being yourself, there's a kind of resistance energy. There's this idea that you're going to have to fight for it, that people will oppose you when you try to speak your truth. And that all sounds very heroic, which is attractive, right? We like that stuff. We like heroism. But from a purely pragmatic standpoint, that's just slowing everything down. Right? To arrive at this gorgeous world, if we want to, you know, get there faster, it makes more sense to not, right? To not have to have that heroic battle. And so under the Tower, so interestingly, we have heart activation. Self-love, following your bliss, restoration. So it isn't really about destruction, it's about restoration. You know, I want to say that this, right, when the top falls off the tower, that what is within is seen. When I was in college, I was in the theater department, and the college had bought a big old theater built in the 1920s, and we did this restoration work. And or actually I should say that the theater was built in the early, at the turn of the century, and then in the 1920s it had been made into a movie house, and they covered over the walls, which were this fabulous kind of marble. You know, it was really beautiful, and so there was all this work that got done to reveal this beauty that had been covered over. And that's what this feels like. That's this heart activation. You know, if you built a tower around your heart to protect yourself, to be practical, now that's coming down. Because this weirdness, this ability to see the ghosts, this ability to walk in beauty, the ability to see and get on the ship, requires vulnerability. It requires love. And so we have this visitation card, the low temperance, right? The two sides of things. Loved ones, benevolent guides, revelations. There is an opening here that is not about battle. Formal advice. Four of Wands. And this feels like the house is waiting for you to come home. This energy of coming home that keeps repeating and reverberating through the readings. I think that's what this is about. This coming home, this ancient self that is coming through, calling back. And I think that it's very ancient. Indeed. But now at the great turning. Now below is this 10 of Swords. And rather than a corpse, I see this as a sleeper. You know, like Rip Van Winkle. And on the other side of him is the Two of Wands. Right? Knowing the ship is coming. And getting ready to get on. And then actually below that I'm seeing now is the Chariot and the Page of Pentacles. Right? This newness. The underside here is the Knight of Pentacles. So keep on keeping on. The dedication, the devotion to the process. Also a sense of service. That to do this is not just about you. It's about everybody and everything. That to embrace the weirdness, to allow this past understanding to move through you and embody you, inhabit you. Is an act of service. 10 of Pentacles repeats. Be prepared for group endeavor. There's also a sense of, showed up in the Libra reading, and it's been in other readings, of gatherings. That people who are on this path in various ways, and it doesn't all have to be, you know, not everybody that you encounter is going to have this, you know, energy of an ancient oracle or shaman. You know, some people may be builders. You know, they may have really innovative solutions to things like trash. Right? There may be really practical, logistical people that you meet up with. You know, they don't all have to have this woo-woo idea. They all will have this love, though. The love of life force. They will all know that we are part of nature, part of this world. They will know how to walk in beauty. And then there's kind of a really interesting message here that is, I mean, it's sort of advice. The advice is to be there with your cup. To be there with your cup, to not be a full cup. To have room in your cup. Right? This is the Page. This is a fresh, new energy. The card that's usually associated with Scorpio is the King of Cups, but we're seeing the Page. And there's this Knight of Swords and this Hermit. And I want to say that this Knight is coming. And he's been sent by the Hermit. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I think it's something that will become clear, assuming that you accept this change that's happening for you. The Hermit is sending the Knight, who will come to you. As I say, I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if it's a person, a message, an event. I don't know. It may become clearer as we go further into Scorpio's readings. It's possible that the answer may come in another reading. For some other sign, I don't know. There is a possible clue. The Knight of Swords is associated with Gemini. This may have to do with Uranus's move. He moves in the early morning hours here of Monday the 7th. His first steps into Gemini. He's there until November 7th. And then he's back for good April 26th of 2026. So I don't know if it has something to do with that. It might not. It might be completely irrelevant. And have to do with something else. So the advice is to be open and welcoming. The word that's coming through is hospitality. Have hospitality. Be hospitable to new ideas, to something that is coming in. Scorpio. Oh, it's very intriguing. I hope you're intrigued. I hope you're excited, Scorpio, about the possibilities. I hope you can feel the beauty that wants to come through. I wish you all the very, very best, Scorpio, and I will see you next time. So long.